All right. Well, probably a good time to get started, and just wanted to welcome everyone to today's webinar focused on cultivation. In this particular case, priming the pump, tilling the soil, all of those great metaphors that we use when it comes to cultivating prospective and existing donors. It's great to see so many familiar faces, and I hope all of you are enjoying a great start to the new year. And I always love it bringing fundraisers together to talk about some of the more interesting topics that confront us fundraisers, like cultivation, which is just such an important element in the fundraising process. And so the more we can talk about things and learn from one another, the better. For many of you folks, this might be a bit of going back to basics, which is always fine as well. But for others, there might be a great nugget or two of information that might really help give you the lift you need to take that next step with that prospective donor, which is what I really hope. I hope that there's usable information here for everyone, and you can take some of that away to really put to good use in your fundraising practice. I will have some opportunities, I think, for some discussion and invite people to weigh in and offer their thoughts and ideas. But when not talking, if you don't mind just sticking yourself on mute, that way if the phone rings, the dog barks, the gardeners come, or whatever, we won't know in the background. So thanks for doing that. And just real quickly, let me go ahead and give you a quick introduction of myself. My name's Chris Looney. I was very happy to finally complete a few fundraising books that I had been working on for the better part of a dozen years last year. And they were just sort of compilations of ideas and thoughts that I had come up with over 25 years working in the fundraising consulting field. And today I'm transitioning my work from sort of working with organizations on strategy to working with individuals specifically on fundraising. And that is a passion of mine, and continues to be a desire of mine to help fundraisers sort of take the next steps, elevate, or giving them the capacity to elevate their capacity. And it's been fun to be able to do that through these webinars, through the books, and through coaching and training. So just very grateful to have that opportunity to be a partner to all of those fundraisers out there like you. All right, so today's webinar focused on cultivation is going to really hit on a few key themes. We're going to start with a really wide perspective and understanding who these key donors and prospects of yours really are, looking at some of the motivations for why donors give, and that provides a solid foundation for us to then really understand cultivation broadly, but also the importance of it and the specificity of different cultivation practices. I'm very excited to kind of lay out 8 different strategies that you might want to consider. And within those strategies, there are quite a few ideas. Some of them might be old hat, and some of them might be relatively new. And through our discussion, who knows, maybe you'll offer something that you've seen or that you've done that would help someone else, or vice versa. So please don't hesitate to share when we start walking through some of those 8 strategies. And then at the end, if there's some time for discussion, that would be really great. So let's kick off by talking a little bit about donors and prospective donors. Who are they? In this particular case, when we're talking about cultivation, we're talking about typically major gift prospective donors, but maybe you don't even know if they are or are not major gift prospects at this time. I mean, a cultivation is one step past identification in the process. So, at this point, you're really trying to make friends. You're trying to bring people closer to the organization. And the types of prospects and donors that you're looking for typically starts with your board members, making them donors, keeping them as donors, especially those that have cycled off the board, want to make sure that they continue to give. You've got event honorees, you've got event sponsors, those that are coming to your events. You've got your list of foundation prospects, your list of corporate prospects. Organizations will typically look to their staff for support at some particular time. And I'm always shocked, and I guess I shouldn't be at this point in time, but I'm always amazed by the significant gifts that I see coming in from staff members who have been with an organization for decades. The professor who retires, or the physician that's built their practice at a particular hospital. The size of gifts and the commitment to giving that these individuals show is quite remarkable. And so I always look at who's closest to the organization, and it's hard to get closer to an organization than staff, right? The one exception to that, or not exception, but the group that might be even closer or as close are volunteers. So not listed here on this slide, but certainly those that should be identified as prospective donors and cultivated further would be your volunteers. But then we also have anyone that is giving today or has given in the past. They require additional cultivation or stewardship. We also would be looking at plan giving prospects, and then whoever you have on your prospect list currently who needs further education and outreach. So the list of donors and prospective donors can be quite large that require cultivation. And they're all looking for something different. Now, Peter Drucker was clear in identifying a major catalyst or rationale for people making a gift to an institution, and they're looking at results as the rationale to give to charity, the impact of the gift. And there is no doubt in my mind that if you are able as an organization to demonstrate impact and results, that's a powerful motivator for people to give. But it's not the only reason why we see people make a decision to give to charity. And I think it's important to be able to identify the drivers of donors and prospective donors so that the ask and the cultivation process can be designed in such a way that's going to meet these prospective donors where they are and really answer the why for them. And this is not an exhaustive list of all of the rationales for why donors give. And we could parse this a million different ways, and we could look at the specific rationales for why individuals give versus foundations versus corporations. And each of those groups clearly have differentiating rationales, but we also want to make sure that we don't complicate things unnecessarily. Let's keep things as simple as we possibly can. Let's start with the reality that all donors, whether they're institutions or individuals, are made up of individuals making decisions. And those individuals typically are making a decision to give for one of these reasons that you see on the screen. And as I go through these, if you see something that is missing, or if you see something that hits you funny, do say so. But the traditional rationales for why donors give to an organization can start with making a difference, that impact, which you see further down on the page, but really being able to see or understand that the gift you're making is helping the mission of the organization, the clients of the organization, the cause, right? So that's fundamental. Why donors give to the organization? Well, they were asked. Let's start there. It's not on the slide, but of course it's incredibly important. People give to people. People give because they're asked, right? So those are probably two of the highest rationales for why giving occurs. They're asked and because people give to people. I think trust is incredibly important. There is often not a significant gift made to an organization when there is a lack of confidence in who's involved in the organization, either at the board level or the executive level, or among those that are responsible for the programs themselves. Some people give because it's just out of habit. They've been giving to this organization for years and years and years, and will continue to do so so long as the organization continues to deliver on its mission. And I think we can all think of organizations that we've made gifts to for very long time, and sometimes wonder, why is it that I keep giving to them? But habit is a rationale. There's an opportunity to leave a legacy for some. This often is where we see plan gifts and estate gifts come into play, wanting to do something beyond our own lifetimes, be able to do something far into the future. Leaving a legacy can be a strong motivator. There's the sort of alignment with the mission, and of course we would expect everyone to give to something that they feel is consistent with their belief system. But here we're also talking about organizations that connect to something very specific in your life or a donor's life. So, for example, if a hospital saved your life, you're going to probably feel some desire to give to it because you've had an experience, a positive experience with that organization. And we see this come into play often with medical associations and research institutions, all kinds of different organizations, foster causes, veterans causes. There's a connection, right? An organization might have a strong case for support. There might be that element of a project or some sort of initiative that really connects to a donor and hits them really square. There's also the fact that they might be incredibly involved as a volunteer, as a board member, or in some other way engaged in the life of the organization. Perhaps the person wants to be a part of the community, wants to be a part of a society, wants to be a part of some aspect of the organization, and it doesn't always have to connect with visibility or prominence or being seen. But often, belonging is a strong motivator for people in their giving. Recognition. We go to great lengths to recognize annual donors, cumulative donors, campaign donors, endowment donor. We spend a lot of time because it's important to a lot of people. And always last there is the tax benefit. And people aren't giving to an organization because the organization offers the tax benefit, but oftentimes organizations are very fortunate to be where they are when a particular donor has had a taxable event and needs to give, and sometimes just being at the right place at the right time is what we experience and what we benefit from. We call certain gifts that come in this way, coming in over the transom. We didn't really necessarily do anything to deserve it, but there it is anyway, and we get to take advantage of it. The organization gets to put it to good use. So all of these motivations are unique. For some donors, it's a combination of several of these factors. Some donors might not even have a sense of why they're giving to an organization because they don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. But fundraisers do spend a lot of time thinking about it, and they want to understand those drivers so that they can provide the most appropriate strategy for moving a relationship forward. As we understand fundraising as a relationship development process, one of the important elements of cultivation is to understand the why, to understand and know the donor so well that it's much easier for you as a fundraiser to appeal to a prospective donor to generate a positive response. So the most effective fundraisers are the ones that grow close enough to a prospective donor that they know the why for that person, and regardless of the mission of the organization, they can figure out the right strategies going forward. So it becomes great for us to think about what cultivation is at this moment, because it's so connected with donor motivations and getting into the head of a prospective donor. So if we think of cultivation as a process, we think of it as a part of the solicitation process. The act of cultivation is meant to help establish and strengthen the relationship with these prospective and current donors over a period of time. And it's not exclusively pre-solicitation. In fact, a significant amount of cultivation happens after a gift, during a stewardship process, but while you are preparing the prospective donor for the next ask. So in the same way that the solicitation cycle repeats over and over again, once a gift is received, there's the recognition stewardship process sort of renews again, so too does the cultivation process. There's always something more to learn, always a way to bring a donor closer. So interestingly, the cultivation process to bring a prospective donor to the table of an organization on the annual side might be step one. Then there's the cultivation of that same donor toward making a major gift, and then that might recur for many, many years, hopefully. Then there's the cultivation step that is associated with a planned gift or an estate gift, all of which becomes more strategic, more personal, and more thoughtful in many ways. So cultivation is ongoing and never seems to stop. It has a range of activities, which I think is part of the exciting part of cultivation, but part of the challenge. What's the right cultivation step for this person? It could be a million different things. And it could include letters, texts, emails, phone calls. It could include invitations to events. It could include tours. It could include recruiting for volunteer engagements and so much more. Importantly, the process of cultivation is designed in such a way, the effective cultivation process is meant to really position you as a fundraiser well for the ask, so that your chances of success are far greater. And it helps really create an opportunity for donors to feel and remain connected so that they'll keep giving, and there'll be that sustainable pattern of giving over and over to the organization, while also allowing the organization to identify and secure new donors. So you can see and understand very easily why cultivation is as important in many ways to the fundraising process as the ask itself. And some might even say that it's more important because with proper cultivation, a significant percentage of prospective donors won't even need the formal sit down and ask process. They'll have been so conditioned to know the importance of the organization and the role that this individual fundraiser donor can play, that they're ready to make the ask even before an ask is made, which is so wonderful. But I think we all understand that oftentimes it's not understanding the value of cultivation or even knowing what to do that is the hard part of cultivation. It's access. It's getting to the right prospective donors that you've identified in the first place. And there's a reason why it's so difficult these days to access, to get an audience with, to connect with, to develop a relationship with prospective donors. And the challenge is that while these donors exist in multitude, there's no shortage of prospective donors out there. They are becoming increasingly reticent to engage because of a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is because they're inundated, or they claim to be inundated with requests from different organizations. So they, yes, have a heart, but that heart is being protected by gatekeepers. It's being protected because they are being asked so frequently to get involved or to give. And so there's this immediate sort of protection mechanism to say, whoa, I can't engage with another organization. I'm already inundated. So because of that, we find that it's often very difficult to kind of break in to be able to penetrate that protection mechanism and to get involved. And so we're going to talk about some of the ways to get around those things, which is incredibly important in the cultivation process, getting access. But there, in addition to getting access to prospective donors these days, other challenges are out there as well. And it's important to kind of understand that the sophisticated donors today, in addition to wanting results, we find are incredibly hands-on. So what does that mean? That very few of these sophisticated donors are like Mackenzie Scott, just sort of giving money with the expectation that you will figure out the best way to invest it. More often than not, these sophisticated donors feel like they have advice and guidance to offer, that they can help you do your work in a more efficient, effective way. And they want to be involved in a variety of aspects of the organization's life, and oftentimes in the expenditure of their investments, which can be very challenging. The good news is that these donors are often risk tolerant, so they're more often than they have been in the past expressing a willingness to take chances, to invest in new ventures, and not sort of just stick with putting more money into what the organization is already doing. That can be challenging too, because that often might mean a lack of desire or interest in providing unrestricted cash gifts. So we all know that the most important dollars are the unrestricted dollars that allow an organization the flexibility to do what it needs to do and invest money where it needs to invest. But oftentimes when you're hands-on, you're risk tolerant, and you are looking for some very specific outcome, that translates into restricted gifts. The last thing I'll say about the sophisticated donors is that they're often very engaged these days with an organization, not just hands-on in the implementation of the gift, but hands-on as a board member, as an event volunteer, or they're just engaged with an organization. They didn't just come out of nowhere. They've been active. And so all of these elements and characteristics are important as we think about some of the different strategies toward implementing cultivation in a proper way. And so I wanted to jump into some of those strategies. There's 8 that I wanted to cover today in the time that we have together. And knowing that time is precious, let's sort of jump in and really get started. I think before we drive into some of the ideas that might be more novel or interesting, I think it's important to get back to basics, because I see, or I kind of laugh when I fail to see a lot of the basic fundamental work in this space being done as it relates to prospective donors. So you can see here, I have it surprising how often people expect positive results without pursuing the right kind of activity. It's not surprising that a certain number of calls to a certain number of prospects is more likely to yield a certain number of meetings and visits. But there's sort of oftentimes this lack of understanding of a connection between activity levels and productivity. So getting back to the basics is just helping us not forget that there are proven practices that help build a strong foundation of relationship building work. And those basic ways include the one-on-one in-person meetings, sitting down for coffee in a person's home or office and just working to get to know them better. And oftentimes it seems like we need to have an excuse or a reason to call or a reason to get together with them. And we've probably been told or conditioned to understand that if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. So back to basics would be to think of some advice that you could gather from this individual and lead with that. Hey, can we get together for coffee so I can ask you some questions about how you might tackle this particular challenge I'm having or the organization is having? Ask for advice. It requires getting on the phone, checking in, providing updates, being able to say thank you, inviting people to volunteer, the call for the meeting, writing personal emails, staying connected beyond just the times where you're asking for a gift. How many other times are you actually connecting with that individual during the course of the year? And there was a time several years ago where we would say it's inappropriate to text someone. You can't text. I think those rules are outdated now. I see so much good cultivation work happening via text, happening via instant messenger, happening on social media. So these are valid ways to stay connected to your prospective donor. Now, again, it doesn't necessarily move the relationship. All steps like this don't move the relationship to the ask or to the next step in the relationship, but all of these touch points do build up strength in the relationship. So I just want to encourage everyone to not venture too far from the basics when doing this kind of cultivation work. But the next advice, the next strategy is to really think about getting personal, developing that relationship. And if we think about fundraising as a relationship development process, then it bears truth that we should be thinking about connecting with these prospective donors on a much deeper level. And I've heard people say that they want to keep the relationship professional, but I don't believe in my heart of hearts that for the donor there is a difference, that they want to be a friend of the staff member that is their sort of handler, their relationship manager, their fundraiser, their major gift officer. They welcome that, or at least they would if the fundraiser was willing to invest in them. And so when we think about the personal things like birthdays and anniversaries and holiday cards and the basket of cookies, the fruit basket, these are all very meaningful and important strategies. And when I say fruit basket, when I say basket of cookies, think of it as a placeholder for something that you know that prospective donor would appreciate. Maybe it is a basket of cookies, but often it might be something a little bit different. The key element here is that you've taken time to bring them something that you believe they would really appreciate. Nothing ingratiates a fundraiser into a prospect's mind more than them knowing about their family, inquiring about the well-being of their family, and connecting with them on that very human level. And I think too, because so many prospective donors identify with their professional roles and the things that they do to generate the potential revenue that can be made or turned into a charitable gift, it's important to try to connect with them on their industry, their job, in the area where they spend probably the vast majority of their waking life. I certainly spent a great deal of time talking to architects about the work that they're doing currently, talking to accountants about what they're seeing in terms of changes in the trends with charitable deductions and things like that. So there's a way to be interested in the work of other people. And I think we often default to, so how's your spouse? How are the grandkids? As opposed to, how's that new venture coming along? Is there, anything I can do to help? So taking almost more of an interest in the professional elements of the work, in addition to the family life as well. For number 3, we're talking about really making sure that the right people within your organization are engaged with the right prospective donors. I fear that for many organizations, the assumption is that the cultivation process is exclusively the provenance of the development department and the development staff, when that is absolutely not the case, as is the case with other elements of the fundraising process, like the solicitation process. There is a way to appropriately engage other members of the organization. And importantly, the executive director, the CEO, the president should be actively involved. They should be building strong relationships with those individuals that have the capacity to support the organization in the most significant ways. After all, the CEO, the executive director, is the face of the organization and has the capacity to speak to prospective donors about the vision and where the organization is headed, and should be the most capable person of inspiring prospective donors. And we need to make sure that we're engaging that individual as robustly as possible in this relationship development process. But in addition to the executive director, we often can do better at engaging program staff and other staff who might have a particular lens into a program of interest or have been around long enough that they can remember the founder, or they can remember when, or even can share anecdotes about how one generation of donors sort of supported the organization through to this next generation of donors that we're meeting with today. So often with organizations, family support has moved from generation to generation, and we're seeing now how common it is for the program officer who's been around for 20 years, who used to meet regularly with mom and dad, is still around and helping with the programs, and can help make that link to the next generation, the children of mom and dad, who can continue that legacy of giving through the next generation and maybe even beyond. So engaging the right people is incredibly important, and it takes, again, understanding the characteristics and the uniqueness of a potential prospective donor to know when and who it's right to meet with that person. And it's not just the internal staff, the executive director or program officers or the development department. I think we all know that we need to figure out ways to leverage board members in this work as well. And so, as adamant as I was about involving the executive director in this work, I would be just as adamant about engaging board members in the cultivation process as well. And this might be where you see the maximum impact, because often board members will be the ones that can get access where a staff member cannot. They can get the meeting. They can be encouraging. They can write a supportive note. They can thank a particular donor. They can join a tour. They can do so many things that help add not only bandwidth to the work that might be more limited because of the thinness of staff, but they have networks of their own, they have expertise of their own, and they can do things often that staff members might not be able to. So making stewardship calls, sending thank you notes, a great way to help them use their position well to steward and cultivate prospective donors. The making of introductions, as I mentioned, it's colleagues, it's friends, it's family members. Those introductions can be invitations to special events, can be invitations to salons, can be invitations to a tour, to a VIP gathering, to a particular performance, or meeting, or some event that showcases the mission of the organization. All of these opportunities are so easy in many ways for board members to utilize their networks and extend those invitations. I also really like to involve board members when there are tours, when there are meetings that a staff member has set up, because they can provide such an incredibly valuable perspective on why a lay member or a volunteer or someone who's not being paid by the organization would choose to give to an organization. And their stories are often so incredible. You know, finding out from a board member why they started giving to the organization, how they came to be involved with the organization. Inevitably, you find that the vast majority of volunteers and board members and donors came to the organization because someone invited them to something. And as soon as we better connect and understand that important relationship between being invited by a peer to get to know an organization, to attend an event, and how that translates so frequently into the donation, the first donation, and then just sort of donations that continue to materialize. I think the more often we would apply effort, pressure, whatever it is, into our boards to engage them in the not solicitation process of fundraising, but the cultivation process of fundraising, which is easier for most of them than expecting them to ask, right? So I think if there's any place that we need to invest more time, it's here in leveraging our board members. I think too, we can more often involve program participants, the beneficiaries of the services that our organizations provide. It is so meaningful and impactful to hear from a scholarship recipient or a program graduate about how their life has been changed and improved because of the services and the experience that they've had with the organization. We want our prospective donors to know where their money is going. And it's often not very credible or not actually processed through the brain when a development person or a board member or executive director says it to them. It just, the statistics don't necessarily connect, but the personal stories, the meeting that person, hearing about how their life has been improved or altered is so impactful. So whenever we can, it would be beneficial to get that program participant to make a presentation in front of, to shake hands with, to be known by. And that's often why we spend so much time thinking about scholarship recipients and matching scholarship recipients with the right donor, because we know that that personal connection is often what is necessary to get the gift or get the gift repeated year in and year out. So connecting to the heart, connecting to the mission, this is incredibly important and something that we can't forget to do in whatever form we have the capacity to do it with our organizations. One of the next ways, number 6 here, is trying to figure out ways to get more people engaged in the life of the organization in a volunteer capacity. We know, and studies show, that people typically give more frequently and give more monetarily when they are connected as a volunteer to an organization. Doesn't have to be as a board member. It could be as an advisory board member. It could be as a volunteer that's picking up trash on the beach during the weekends. It could be any number of things, as long as it's connected to the mission of the organization and is useful. So we need to figure out, as part of the cultivation process, the way to extend an invitation to get more involved, and to ideally translate opportunities for them to get involved and matching them with something that they're either good at, committed to, passionate about, interested in. And some of the ways that you can do that would be committee work. There's hundreds of different committees that I've seen organizations start or that have on a standing basis, but doing strategic plans is one that just popped into my head. Gala committees is another. Hiring committees. The list goes on and on and on. And these shouldn't be primarily populated by board members, but there should be opportunities to invite other non-board members as well. There's the projects that I mentioned, like the beach cleanup. All of these are great to gather large groups of people together to have not only an opportunity to do something very specific, but hear a message before and after about the importance of the work. The ongoing stuff is great as well. I think it behooves organizations to really think more critically, not only about what those volunteer opportunities are, can be, should be, but thinking too about ways that these volunteers can be organized and staffed. Often with organizations, it's a paid position, volunteer coordinator position, but there could be a volunteer coordinator as well. So think a little bit more thoroughly about the importance of engagement and how you're going to work that into the system. And people love to be recognized. So the opportunity to provide certificates of recognition and thanking people publicly for their engagement is really important. We fail to make use of some of the existing events, activities that already exist for cultivation purposes. And if we think about all of the different activities of the organization and whether or not we can turn some of those into cultivation events, I bet you'd find that there are some real gems in there that you can invite people to. And this isn't just the gala, right? But we're talking about starting tours. And Goodwill of Orange County has the Real Goodwill. Every organization should be thinking about how it can invite people to its campus to expose them to what really happens at the organization, to get to know the organization well. And these tours and getting to know programs should be well established and available for anyone that you feel needs to or would benefit from getting to know the organization a little bit better. We do know that friend-raising events, galas, other special events are incredibly important. The salons in people's homes help, giving people access to a special home, behind the scenes of something. If you want to cultivate someone and are struggling to invite them to something, it's probably because they don't have a chance to meet someone that they want to meet, get access to a home or to some place that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get access to, meet someone, or learn something that would be incredibly important. So think about sort of the access question and think about the what's in it for me question. If you can answer some of that, if you have something that can really attract a person to a particular event, do it, because then you can package the mission of the organization, the call to action around that event. More important is what's in it for me. If you can figure that out, then people will come and then give you the audience you need to help explain more about it. And it doesn't always have to be 100% connected to the mission. It could be, come hear this, or come have dinner at my home. And then I'd love the opportunity to take 5 minutes and just share with you more about an organization that I'm passionate about. That is a wonderful cultivation event, and it's 95% fellowship and fun, and 5% about, hey, I wanted to share something about an organization with you that you might find interesting and that you might want to know more about, right? So think about access, think about what's in it for me from the perspective of the donor. Use those existing events, organize activities, invite people to things that they're going to care about. And last but not least, and something that I don't think many of us are good at, is asking people for their advice and expertise. I hit on this very briefly a few minutes ago, but I'm surprised by how infrequently people are asked to give their advice. So if someone is a legal professional, if someone is a CPA, if someone is an entrepreneur, these are skills and areas of expertise where you can get a lot of good free advice if you're willing, and that will often translate into the reciprocity of a gift or even more engagement. So figure out those ways that you can ask professionals for their advice, figure out those ways that you can put people with expertise in front of groups so that they can share their expertise. Ask them to help you solve particular problems, and not be afraid of what they might come up with. Again, this is why we have advisory committees and why those can be so successful, because you get people in a room and put out some of your bigger challenges and let them noodle on those things and help you solve those problems. Doesn't commit you to using those, to having to use that advice, but I think it's incredibly important to match people's expertise, match people's passions, and really allow them to share from their perspective how you, your organization, or the issues you're working on might be benefited from that advice and guidance. And I have so many stories about how, for example, in the technology space, how often those individuals were able to solve some pretty significant data or technological issues that an organization had. And when they were able to solve or help solve those problems, they felt great about their engagement and wanted to do more and were willing to return, to answer more questions, to join different events, and just felt more involved, engaged with the organization. And truly, that is what cultivation is all about. So I know I talked too much about all of this and didn't leave a lot of time, but for those who are willing to stay online for a few more minutes, I would certainly invite you to ask any questions that you have, or just take a few minutes for some discussion. Anyone out there have a comment, thought, idea? Oh, you must have some thoughts, comments, and ideas. We have a shy group. Hey, Mary Beth, did you have something?
Hey, Chris. Well, I'm just wondering, with the sophistication of the donors that they are these days, how are people reaching out and contacting donors to set up meetings? I'm with a large organization, and so I have responsibility for like half of United States about right now. And a lot of times it is handwritten notes and it is emails, but getting people on the phone has been an extreme challenge that I didn't find years ago. So I'm wondering if anybody else has some good thoughts on what to share that they do get through to donors, or you leave a message and do they actually call you back? So with technology these days, I'm wondering if somebody has an answer in that area. I know I have tried sending a note ahead of time in snail mail saying I will call you Wednesday at 10 a.m. And so that they have a heads up that it's my phone number that's calling, and I give them my phone number in the mail. So I'm that 2 weeks ahead of time, not too early, not too late, but try to time it so that they remember I'm calling. So that's been a challenge.
Yeah. Well, let other folks weigh in. Anybody else have some advice or share something that's working for them?
Besides just showing up at the door with a plate of cookies.
Which is hard if you're on the West Coast and they're in Chicago, right?
Yeah, yeah, if they're out of state.
Yeah. Well, I certainly applaud you for what you've done. That pre sort of call, that pre-letter followed by the call is so appropriate. I don't think that there's any better way to sort of pave the way for you to do that. I think what's interesting is how much easier it is to use Zoom now as a platform to replace sort of that initial first in-person meeting, right? So
Mhm.
offering the Zoom as opposed to a phone call can sometimes feel less obtrusive in some strange way. I love the sort of technology that exists today to allow people to access your calendar, which
Mhm.
has often been a challenge of just sort of coordinating times between calendars and how many back and forth conversations does it take to set up that meeting. So technology has certainly helped us in terms of finding a mutual time. But for you, that's actually just trying to find someone warm enough to answer your call and come back to you. That presents, dramatically different sort of challenges. Um, I think the reality for me is that the expectations have to be much lower in terms of who's actually going to respond to you, to that outreach, given the fact that much of your list might be a prospect list as opposed to a donor list, or even if it's a donor list, those donors might have made a one-time gift because they're doing it for a friend, and now you're thinking of them because they have capacity as a much more significant donor, right? I think if you were to take the step that you took as a first step, because I don't think that there is a better first step, I'd wonder then what your next step might be. So first step is your handwritten letter with the phone number. The next step is the phone call with probably the voicemail, right?
Yeah.
Um, so what's the next step? And as simple as this sounds, it might be the follow-up text. Um, and and that text might be, "Hi, it's Mary Beth Steen. I just left you a voicemail. Um, just wanted to see if you had a couple of minutes to jump on the phone. Are you available tomorrow at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m.?" And just asking them a quick question to see if you can get them to respond yes or no to that question,
Yeah.
right?
Hey, Chris,
To,
have you had good luck with sending out texts for
yeah,
people?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Huh.
It's surprisingly much better than phone and voicemail. At this point, everyone is just conditioned to let the phone go to voicemail unless they're
Yeah,
familiar with the number,
it's a
right?
good word, conditioned.
Yeah. And then the condition two is everyone will look at their text and quickly ignore or delete the ones that they don't want, especially if it seems like it's a solicitation. So writing the text in such a way that it doesn't appear to be a solicitation,
Mm-hmm.
that it's more of a friend reaching out, not for a solicitation, not for
Okay,
an
yeah,
ask. I
okay,
think
I'll
would
try that.
right. And I think there just has to be that follow-up, because I cannot fault you whatsoever for your sort of cold outreach effort, right? Because it is kind of a cold outreach effort. And it's not a warm outreach where they've said, hey, can someone call me, right? You're proactively trying to build a relationship with them. And so I would start thinking about 4 or 5 different steps that might allow you to get them to respond to you in some way. So if you do the pre-note, followed by the phone call, followed by the text, and then that's probably activity over the course of 1 month, right? So
Yeah,
what might be month 2, month 3, month 4 before you sort of just cut bait, because at some point you can only, you're going to get new prospects in, and at some point too, a few of those people should respond. So you're doing a lot of qualification work more than cultivation work.
yeah,
So with the qualification work, the the percentages of success are much lower. And I think you'll want to just be thinking about how you can cut some people loose if they don't respond to your best outreach efforts over a 5-month process, right?
yeah. Okay, that was helpful, thanks.
Yeah, I love it. It's good, good thinking, because access is important. And I spend a lot of time when we're thinking about a particular prospective donor about how to get to them. Who's the right person? What's the right thing that they'll respond to? Uh, because a lot of effort can be wasted if we know they're not going to respond to a phone call, we know they're not going to respond to a letter, but they will respond to Joe from XYZ Corp, who is a donor, and they're friends, they're golfing buddies. So if we
Oh,
can get
yeah.
Joe to
Mhm.
talk to Jerry, then maybe we have a chance.
Well, it's always nice when you have that information, but
Right. Well, and that's why cultivation and this work is not overnight, right? It takes a lot of research, it takes a lot of time, a lot of failed efforts, but you keep at it because you know this person, or you have this feeling that this person, if they only knew about what you did, would be enamored, would be inspired, would be generous.
yeah. Okay, thanks.
Well, if there's nothing else, and please do jump out there if there's something else. If not, then we will bid farewell. All right.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Well, thank you, Mary Beth, and thank you all for participating today. And I look forward to seeing you next week. There'll be another webinar on another topic, and sure hope I get to see all of you soon. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And once I do get underway, I'll probably be reaching out to ask some questions and invite some participation, but we'll just try to keep everybody on mute until we do offer
Yep.
some of those opportunities
Okay,
to chat.
I'm going on mute.
Sounds good, Mary Beth. It wasn't just directed at you, of course, but it's difficult when you have so many folks online and all of a sudden the lawnmower starts or whatever else, right?